when you get two radically different quotes for the same job, £10,000, £1,000 for a job that needs doing on the house, it is safe to assume that they are not both quoting for the same thing, even though they may claim to be. I think the same is true with some of our least favourite passages of the Bible. And you can see what we're talking about. We're talking about DIY atonement here. In Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve attempt DIY atonement. In other words, and here is the first problem with DIY atonement, you diagnose the problem yourself and you deal with it yourself. They diagnose the problem, their eyes are opened and they can see that they are naked. How do you deal with nakedness? Okay, some fig leaves here. Fig leaves are cheap. You can sew them together yourself. That sort of fixes the problem of nakedness, except what's God dealing with? Is he dealing with the same problem? 3 curses and an animal has to die, or 2. I mean, what's that about? That's way higher as a quote. But of course, he's not dealing with the same problem. It's not just defenselessness, nakedness. He's dealing with a fractured relationship with him, and it needs fixing. And here we have the problem with DIY atonement. You can only deal with the problem that you can see, and we can't see what God sees. Hence, our quote is always a lot cheaper, and our solution is never effective at all. What problem is Aaron dealing with in Exodus chapter 32? He's dealing with the problem of an angry Moses. And how does he deal with it? Oh, don't be angry with me, your brother. What's Moses dealing with when he sends the Levites out to kill their brother and neighbour and friend? He's dealing with the problem of an angry God. It's not the same problem. And yet, who needs to deal with this thing? Who needs to dictate how it's dealt with? Moses does. You've got to deal with the real problem. Aaron deals with what he can see. The first he knows that there is a problem is Moses smashing the tablets at the foot of the mountain. Okay, he deals with what he can see. Achan doesn't know that there is a problem. Here's another problem with DIY atonement. Joshua chapter 7, it's probably not even when the people of Israel are defeated at Ai that Achan starts thinking, Houston, we have a problem. He only starts becoming aware, I'm sure, that he has not successfully covered up his sin, dealt with the issue that he may have felt on his conscience by simply hiding the goods, the loot, in his tent. He hasn't effectively covered it up at all, and suddenly the clans are chosen and his clan is chosen, and suddenly the families are chosen and his family is chosen, and then of course he becomes aware too late that there is a problem. Deeply uncomfortable, these passages of the Bible, aren't they? But why is God's quote so expensive? Because God knows what he's dealing with. You cannot choose to contradict the word of God by which we have life and not be choosing death. They have chosen death. Their choice gets honoured. One more example. David. 2 Samuel chapter 11. What's he dealing with? He's dealing with the problem, and he's become aware of it by Bathsheba saying, I'm pregnant. He deals with that problem the way only a king can. Other people die. Well, his subjects die all the time. He's always sending men into battle. Why not Uriah? Uriah dies. One of the great heroes of Israel dies. Doesn't cover up successfully. Fig leaves never work. What problem is being dealt with in 2 Samuel chapter 12? Is it just that God takes the hard line? No, God deals with the reality. Fractured relationship with God. The child dies. But ultimately, what God is concerned with is bringing his people to the reality that is Jesus. And DIY atonement has to be cleared out of the way for that to happen. DIY atonement is always a failure, because ultimately what are we talking about? We're talking about atonement. We're actually settling ourselves down with ourselves. I've done something wrong. I feel bad. Therefore, I need to do something. Whether that be a big sob story about how dreadful I've been and how awful, and then you feel sorry for me, or whether it's brazening it out with pride and saying, yeah, I did it. What are you going to do about it? Or If I feel bad about something I've done, why not just eat a little bit more? Just treat myself, punish myself. It's part of the same story. It's still DIY atonement and it's still a fig leaf. What I need is his diagnosis and his solution. And that's at one and the same time far more serious, but far more wholesome. It's far more serious because actually it's not about me. It's about me as his creature, as part of his creation. It's about him. But if he deals with that far more serious problem, ultimately, he'll deal with me. That's good news. If you have been, thank you for listening.